The eye has got 3 layers or tunics to it. The outermost, the white part that you can see, is the sclera. This also has a lot of fat and other things around it because your eye is in the eye socket, and there's a lot of fat around there to help protect the eye, make it a lot harder for you to have that globe luxation. So we got the outermost layer, which is called the sclera. That's the white part of the eye. Then there's a middle layer called the choroid. That is the vascular layer. That's where all the blood vessels are. And then the innermost layer is called the retina, which we're going to see here in a second. Now, normally, right, so this eye has been dead for quite a while, so once you die, there's some chemical changes that start to happen, protein deposits. This is kind of basically like what cataracts is. So this was a living sheep eye. This would be clear. That's the cornea, okay? Again, so the cornea is part of the sclera. It's the clear part of the sclera. Most, if you have a properly shaped cornea and a properly working lens, the light that will get focused and bent and will hit the sweet spot, which is the fovea centralis. Most people have an improperly shaped cornea. It's either too flat or too curved. If it's too flat, that's nearsighted. If it's too curved, that's farsighted. Okay? All right, so I'm going to cut this thing open.
Oh man.
These guys are not the sharpest.
I can scoot back. I don't need to be that close to the liquid.
No, please let me.
Yeah, it's happened before. Yeah, I've got all sorts of goop on me over the years doing this class. Oh, there we go. Man, these scuffles are not that sharp.
It doesn't look as appetizing as I thought.
Okay. So here you can see
Look at all the juices.
a lot of juices in the body. All right.
Could dehydrate.
So here is the lens. Okay, now again, this lens has become opaque. If this were a living eye, this lens would be clear. Right? So this lens has become opaque because the person is dead, or the animal is dead. You've got 2 chambers to the eye. You've got the anterior chamber, which is in between the cornea and the lens. That is filled with this thin, watery stuff that we call aqueous humor. And the back, the posterior chamber, is this jelly-like stuff called the vitreous humor. So this is called the vitreous humor or the vitreous body. Now, if you notice here, the eye, back of the eye here, has got this really shiny, kind of incandescent-looking stuff on it. This is called the tapetum lucidum, which means vibrant tapestry. All nocturnal animals have this. This is what caught, like, so you shine a flashlight at a raccoon or a cat and their eyes glow red.
Yeah.
That's because of that. So this gives them better night vision. So if there's any ambient light, like from the moon or from whatever, it lightens up the inside of their eye, making it easier to see. So cats, raccoons, other types of nocturnal animals, they see really well in night compared to us. That's also what gives that glowing thing. That's also what causes that deer in the headlight thing with deer. So deer is bounding down the road and you shine the lights at it. It kind of makes it freeze for a second because it kind of overloads their system, kind of like you see like in movies when like SWAT teams go in and they throw a flashbang. That's the same kind of thing to the deer with the headlights. Okay, so that's the tapetum lucidum. And then the dark part here, this is the retina. So I'm going to pull back the retina here. So you can see how thin the retina is here. Right? This is why if you have like a concussive trauma, like blunt force trauma to the head, you can actually end up with a torn or ruptured retina. This is a common thing that happens to like boxers, people that have head injuries, things like that. If you do end up with a detached retina, you got a couple hour period of time before that tissue dies. So you got to very quickly get to the hospital, and then an ophthalmologist can go in through your cornea, and they can repair the detached retina, and you'll save your vision. If you don't get there in time, then you're going to be blind in that eye, or at least partially blind due to the retina. Okay, so that's the retina, and then behind it here, this is the choroid plexus. So here's the sclera, the choroid plexus, and then the innermost layer, which is the retina. So inside of the retina is where you will find all of the rods and cones. You can't really see it in here. Hold on, let's see if I can. I think you can on this one here. Yeah, you can't really see it on here. Yeah, this is pretty degraded. Sometimes you can see because there's actually a little like a dot where it actually is, where you can actually see it. Here, if I clean this out a little bit here, you can kind of see. So there is the opening of the iris.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
You can see here those little hair-looking things. Those are called the ciliary bodies. That's actually what makes up your iris. So your iris is smooth muscle. It's got little muscles in it that can either constrict or open the iris. So when the muscles contract, it dilates the pupil to let more light in. When there's too much light, the muscles will relax and your pupil diameter will get smaller. Every single person has the same color pigment in their irises. You all have black. That's the only color pigment you have in your irises. The difference between light colored eyes versus dark colored eyes is the amount of pigment. So people with blue eyes have very little pigment. People with brown eyes have lots of pigment. This is why blue-eyed people are more photosensitive. They're more sensitive to bright light than people who have darker eyes, because the darker eyes absorb more of the light that's coming in. And so that's the only difference between different eye colors, is the amount that's in there. And so normally you would see the lens would be kind of just floating in here like this, and it'd be held together by those what are called suspensory ligaments. When you squint, what you're doing is you're kind of trying to contract those little ligaments to help fine-tune the lens so you can see something a little bit better. So it helps you kind of fine-tune the adjustment. And then the light will hit the fovea centralis, which is in the back. That'll light up the rods and cones, which will get converted to an action potential, which will go down the optic nerve, which has been detached, but it would be right about here. That'll send it from the optic nerve back to the occipital lobe to the primary visual center, and then your brain will interpret that as vision. And like we said on Tuesday, because of optics, as it goes through the lens, it gets turned upside down and backwards. So the image that actually hits the back of your retina is upside down and backwards. Your brain just flips it the right side up. And you're also getting a flashing image, and your brain just fills in the gaps in between.